Welcome back to the Invisible Disabilities Association, Invisible InCourage. I'm Kellie Pokrifka, and I'm so excited to introduce Doug Smith.
Hey, Kelly.
Hi, Doug. So tell us a little about yourself. What do you do?
Wow, today, in the world of trauma, I'm extremely busy.
Mhm.
I wrote a book called The Trauma Code in 2011, and I've been on the road talking about it since basically I wasn't allowed to be on the road again. So I had to cancel a bunch of appointments, but this environment has worked out really well, and I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about that and maybe share some of the stories I have from back in the day playing against Wayne Gretzky and Mark Messier and Grant Fuhr, and this is a jersey that came from a record holding a record for the NHL, which was the biggest comeback in NHL playoff history. So
Wow.
I like to share some of those stories. It's an old part of my life because I've moved on, but I've been very fortunate. I'm really glad to be around. Thanks for having me.
Of course. And so Doug was the second overall pick in the NHL draft in '81, and he was one of the youngest players to be drafted, right?
Yes, 18 years, 2 weeks old. Yes.
Very cool. Yeah, tell us a little about your hockey career and what ended it.
So I was drafted second overall. I played for the LA Kings for 5 years. By year five, I had been so emotionally traumatized that I was begging to be traded. And finally, I got traded to the Buffalo Sabres. Scotty Bowman, who people might know as the winningest coach of all time, finally traded for me. And the amazing thing was, even though I wasn't functioning well in LA after 5 years, when I got to Buffalo, Scotty picked me up at the airport, and on the way to the hotel, he told me that he had always believed I could be one of the best players. He gave me back this belief, and the next night I went out and I scored 13 seconds into my first game with Buffalo, and it says something about belief. In Los Angeles, I spent 5 years sort of getting knocked down, and then I got to Buffalo and somebody told me I could do it. And it had nothing to do with my physical ability when I got traded. I went from a healthy scratch in LA to a guy that was playing on the first line and 35 minutes a game in Buffalo within a month.
That's
And
huge.
it had nothing to do with my physical ability. It had everything to do with my mental ability. And it was invisible.
Yeah, definitely.
So after Buffalo, I went to play for the Edmonton Oilers. When Wayne Gretzky was traded to the Los Angeles Kings, I was traded from Buffalo to Edmonton.
Okay.
So I started the season in Wayne Gretzky's shoes that year. And then after time in Edmonton, I was traded to the Vancouver Canucks to play with Trevor Linden and for Pat Quinn. And then 2 years in Vancouver, and Craig Patrick and Mario Lemieux wanted me to come to Pittsburgh to play with Mario when he was coming back off his bad back, and I said yes, and I went to play with Mario, and that ended up being probably the highlight of my entire hockey career, was to share
Really?
space with Mario and
Wow.
to have the opportunity to practice with him. More for me as a professional,
Mhm.
seeing what he was capable of just in practice. When everybody's loose, and it was absolutely phenomenal. And then I went over to Europe to play, and in game 607, professional game 607, I went headfirst full speed into the end boards, and I shattered the fifth and sixth cervical vertebrae in my neck, and that resulted in me becoming paralyzed and starting life all over again. It was a turning point in my entire life.
Yeah, absolutely. What was that recovery process like for you?
Everything stopped for me.
Yeah.
Everything had been moving so fast for so long.
Yeah.
And the bright lights of the NHL, the bright lights of professional sports, always being in the spotlight, and then all of a sudden, the impact. And I remember when I was lying on the ice with my head on my hands, and I knew I had broken my back.
Ugh.
Um, I made a commitment to myself that if I got out of that particular situation,
Yeah.
that I would figure out a way to do better. I realized when I was lying on the ice, it was like a flip book. You know, when you flip through a book that has pictures in it and it makes a movie out of it? It was like that for me. And I was able to see very clearly all the times I had treated people inappropriately or been short with people. And,
Wow.
and that's the vision I had. And at that moment, I made a commitment that I was going to go back. And over about 10 years after I recovered, I went back and I apologized to people. Some of them didn't even know why I was apologizing. And I was
Wow.
apologizing for not saying thank you, because I never said thank you to the people that drafted me. I never said thank you to the people that traded for me. I never appreciated anything they had ever done. And that's what I saw when I broke my neck. That's the thing that changed me and got me working on my books and on System 438.
Wow, that's incredible. I can't believe that that is what you were seeing.
That's what I saw. I was that close to death, millimeters from death. And
Wow.
that's and conscious, but not in pain,
Right.
thinking perfectly
Wow.
clearly. Okay, so I wasn't knocked out. I went pile driver, top of the head first, so into the end board. So my brain, my spinal cord
Yeah.
was actually held intact by my everything was like boom. So my brain didn't slap across the side of my head or the top of my head because the spinal cord was holding my brain in place. So if I would have gone in sideways, I would have died probably instantly. But because I went top of the head first, and you can see this video at DougSmithPerformance.com. You can just go there, and the video's on the intro video. It's the only video in the world of a professional hockey player shattering his spine, going head first into the end boards. Can you believe it? It's the only one. And it's sitting there on the front cover. I just launched a new website, and so I'm showing it to everybody.
What is it like for you to watch that?
Well, I've seen it so many times in my speaking gigs and stuff. I put it up there for people so that they can see it. But every time I stand with people, with a group of people, or sit with a group of people and watch it, the emotion in me, it's like everybody else's emotion impacts me, because I instantly get overheated and I instantly sweat watching it. But I continue to do it because the symptoms seem to lessen the more I confront it.
That's so interesting that you still have that. What is that? And one of the topics you talk about a lot is cumulative emotional trauma. Can you tell us what that is?
Yeah, well, cumulative emotional trauma is part of a bigger system.
Okay.
And so what I'll do is I'll give the audience some awareness about trauma.
Yeah.
That's the first step. That's the 4 out of the System 438. So there are 4 types of trauma.
Okay.
The first type of trauma is catastrophic physical. Second is catastrophic emotional. Third is cumulative physical, like hitting your head with a soccer ball. And fourth is cumulative emotional. All of these are not visible. The first 3 are visible. The fourth one is invisible. Cumulative emotional trauma is like carbon monoxide to the brain. And so what I do is I help people by understanding their subconscious brain and the priorities of their subconscious brain, how they can better identify and break down the cumulative effects that they get from trauma. It allows them to see the cumulative emotional trauma. It allows them to see stuff that they haven't seen before.
Right.
So there's 4 types of trauma. There's 3 priorities of the subconscious brain, and the subconscious brain controls 95% of your human functioning. So why not leverage it?
Yeah.
First priority is meeting basic needs, not Maslow's hierarchy. Maslow's hierarchy isn't incorrect. It's just incomplete. It doesn't go into self-actualization. So meeting basic needs is number 1. Clarity of thought is number 2. Our brain craves clarity of thought. It likes it. And so anything you can do for clarity of thought, like meditation or yoga, anything like that, feeds that priority. And then the 4th priority is helping other people. So we have an innate desire to help other people. If you live your life by those 3 priorities, you'll be fine. But what I did was I organized, I gave even more power or more risk, whatever you want to say, because once you just learn how to use this, it's a weapon. Yeah. There are only 8 behaviors that feed those 3 priorities that we've been able to discern. Okay. So here are the 8 behaviors that I learned to get to the NHL, and that I didn't know and had to learn after I broke my neck. There are 4 that I needed to get to the NHL: belief in self, motivation, focus, and trust. I didn't need any more than that to get to the NHL. But when I broke my neck, I needed emotional control.
Okay.
I needed awareness. I needed asking for help,
Yeah.
and I needed purpose.
Interesting.
And those 4 I didn't need to get to the NHL. I needed those to be able to survive in society. The NHL, professional sports, is like a bubble.
Yeah.
It gives you a false sense of just about everything. And so I didn't need to control emotions as an example, because I would get 2 minutes in the penalty box for doing something to somebody that you would get 15 years in jail for.
For sure.
I didn't know it was the wrong thing to do. I had been conditioned since the age of 6 or 7 years old that if I got a 2-minute penalty for something I did that was really mean, the guys would congratulate me on the bench. So I was rewarded for actually doing carnage on the ice. And there was no way I could have understood it a different way, because I was in that environment all the time.
Absolutely.
And
Could you tell us
Yeah.
more about like how you started being groomed for the NHL just as a child?
So when I was born, I had all sorts of problems with my legs. So when I started to walk, they put me in ankle to hip leg braces like Forrest Gump. And you'll see pictures in my book and on my website. And that's, my mom built my belief to be able to get there in the first place. And then once I got the leg braces off, I was like Forrest Gump. I just ran everywhere. And I was in great shape, and I could skate like the wind. So they identified me as a top prospect at a young age, and then they surrounded me with maybe not the right people. And the people that were my assistant coaches that I was drawn to, I remember being drawn to them. I won't mention any names. I could never figure out why they never really came around me, why they never spent any time with me. And it's been later in life that I've sat down with them and had a coffee, and they've explained to me that they were told not to ever talk to me. They were told to be hands off with me, even from the age of 10 and 12. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was awful. And so there was nobody that was going to give me a better path. There was going to be a head coach and maybe my parents from time to time, but I was going to be conditioned to have no fear, because that's one of the things that you can't have, to play in the NHL, especially in my day, is fear. You couldn't afford to have it.
Absolutely. So you said the 8th aspect was having purpose. What is your current purpose? What did you find?
Meeting basic needs, clarity of thought, and helping other people.
Yeah.
That's my purpose. But here's how you find yours. Yours might not be that. Here's how you do it. You're dying by the side of the road. You're not in pain, but you're going to die in 5 minutes. You have to write something down that's so compelling that somebody that you don't know comes along, takes it from you, and is so compelled by your message that after you die, they have to take it to somebody else and show somebody else. If you don't have one of those in your mind right now and you're not prepared, then I don't think you're prepared to die.
Wow. So how do you find that? Like, what do you do?
I don't understand the question. What do you do?
Yeah, how did you end up finding your purpose? Like, how did you know what your life-saving message would be?
I was put in that position. I was dying. By the side of the road.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I had to come up with something, and I've come up with something that works and is ubiquitous. I explain how trauma works, that it isn't a disease. I go into PTSD. There's 11 pages of scientific studies, that are in my book.
Wow.
It's not a debate. So when I go to the front of the room and speak about trauma, I don't debate with the audience anymore. There's a nice note from the Queen of England and the Governor General of Canada right there. You know what you're talking about, and most of my time is spent with the Canadian Armed Forces, the Chief of Defense, Vice Chief of Defense staff. We're all looking for a better path right now. I just happened to stumble into the boards like I stumbled into the NHL, and I survived. And I made that commitment when it happened, and I have a spouse that stuck with me. My daughter was a week old when I became a quadriplegic, and I had a 2-year-old. So my wife Patty and I just celebrated our 31st wedding anniversary.
Congrats.
And without Patty, I would have been dead probably since Buffalo, since we got married, I would have died probably 3 times, 4 times. It's taken me that long to be sort of, you know, a little bit tentative around dangerous things.
That's
That's my
incredible.
life.
That's incredible.
I know myself because System 438, what it becomes is a filter for you. So if you get into it, if you go to my website and subscribe,
Yeah.
it becomes a filter for the rest of the world, because once you understand trauma better and understand that everybody suffers from trauma, if you understand it better than everybody else, you can see things that other people can't see.
Okay.
And so you can help people more readily than other people can.
Yeah.
But it comes with a warning.
What's that?
You'll have to help them. It's going to get inside of you. And if you know, if it feels good to do it, you're going to do it.
Yeah.
But you'll be able to see stuff that maybe you don't want to see. People will open up to you maybe a little bit more than you were expecting. I say to my wife all the time, I can't believe this person that I don't even know opened up to me. And it was only because I put my story in a book, right? I mean, basically, so if you've got a story out there and you're in the audience, I mean, I've got in my first book, Thriving in Transition, it's right on the shelf right there. I have a model on how you write a book, and it's so easy. I've got 10 authors that have written books and that I'm recognized in. I'm recognized in a caged example, a caged mind. It has my name at the bottom because I'm teaching people how to put their books together.
That is so cool.
It's not hard, it's easy. So you just have to ask me. I'll send you my book, no problem.
That's amazing. Yeah. Okay, so tell me, what are some common misconceptions people have about trauma that you want to clear up?
People think it's physical.
Okay.
Injury is to the body as trauma is to the psyche. We all suffer from trauma. It's systemic. There is a ubiquitous system to help you manage it. It will always be with you, but it does not have to control you. Yeah. Right? Once you start looking at it within that framework, your whole life changes, because all of a sudden you start to manage something that's been running reckless with your life. And I picture an 800-pound gorilla. It needs to meet basic needs, needs clarity of thought, needs to help other people. And you're going to let it run rickshaw over your life. Yeah, that's a very dangerous proposition, because it's an irrational being. It doesn't. All you got to do is feed it the right behaviors, and then it'll calm down, and you'll be able to use it to lift heavy things. You'll be able to help you. It'll help you build organizations that can leap tall buildings with a single bound.
Wow.
Like, would you want to do that? Start a business and then just have your business go through the roof within 24 months?
Would be pretty nice, yeah.
Yeah, and I've got a lineup of people who would come on a show like this and say, yeah, I used it and it worked for me. And now they're integrating it into their organizations in a way that they want to integrate it. Because it's not mine, it's ours. I just put it in the right order. Here's the thing. Success in a knowledge worker society from this day forward, it's not about doing the right thing anymore. You can do the right thing all day long. Everybody wants to do the right thing. Yeah. You have to do the right thing in the right order. This is a physics exercise now.
Okay.
I won the Bobby Smith Award, which was the highest academic awards in junior, my second year when I was a 17-year-old. And then I went to the NHL and I stopped learning for 11 years. That's what happens when you go to the NHL. Okay? Or you go to professional sport. Well, you just stop learning. I mean, it's just what happens. It's even worse. The good things you learn, a lot of them sort of evaporate, and you forget, because everybody. I won't even go down that road. Something positive came out of this. I appreciate the opportunity to have played in that environment. Yeah. There's a lot of work that they still have to do. I am in communication through Tony McKegney, who is the third Black player to play in the National Hockey League, with the NHL head office and Gary Bettman's office. There's a lot of discussions around trauma right now. They've got a big nut to crack with this COVID. So, but once that's underway, then the other conversations are going to happen at a very high level with the right people, the people who have experienced this kind of thing over their lifetime. They're ready to come and sit down and say, hey, let's just put measures in place to fix the problem.
That's really exciting to hear. That's very cool. What has been the most rewarding thing you've done since leaving the NHL?
When I was paralyzed, it was Whistler. I had been to Whistler when I was with the Vancouver Canucks, and I was a ski racer when I was 16.
Okay. Wow.
And I'd never seen anything like Blackcomb in my life.
Okay.
And when I was paralyzed, this is hard for me. It's hard. But when I was
understandable.
When I was paralyzed, it was Whistler, getting my kids, the newborn, a week-old baby, and my 2-year-old to Whistler. And so it was the cliche, mountain climbing, and I got there with them when they were 10 and 12 years old, and it snowed 30 centimeters, 40 centimeters the night before, and my daughter got off the chairlift at the top of Blackcomb and went into snow up to powder, up to her armpits, and it took us 4 hours to get down the hill that day, and they never ever forgot it. My daughter lives in Fernie, BC now. She's got her avalanche training. She's loving life.
That is so cool.
And that climb to the mountain is probably why she's living that life.
That is so cool.
Yeah, it all sort of fits together, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you're going through some of your hardest times and, forever seemed too far to be able to comprehend, getting through your darkest days and your toughest hours, what gave you the courage just to get through one more day?
There's so many people that could use a hand. It's really the next person that I meet that opens up to me, that aligns with me and says, hey, this is the issue that I have. Maybe you have a solution for me.
Yeah.
And even if they're confrontational about their position,
okay,
you can't speak to trauma. You can only observe it. Okay. And then what you do after you observe it, then if you have options, and I have system 438, so I'm ready to give it to them, but I give it to them and I back away. So it's important that you have options for people that have trauma, that you don't speak to their trauma, because you can't possibly relate to their trauma, because every trauma is different, because it's impacted by everything that's happened to us since 1 month after conception, if you don't include epigenetics.
That is so cool. Tell me more about that.
It just works that way. It's a very systematic process that we have sitting right here on top of our head, and it never stops learning. In fact, if you put it in front of multiple object tracking, the brain will continue to learn continuously. We have not seen an end to its ability to learn and speed up, which is directly, that ability is directly related to neurocognitive ability. So over the last 8-10 years, working and understanding this mechanism here and how it all fits together in the central nervous system, I believe has made me stronger. I'm a better basketball player. I seem to be able to manage the space around me more effectively, including people. And so it's done that for me. I encourage you to dive into anything that has to do with improving the brain's performance, but make sure that it's supported by scientific research. Make sure you do your research on it.
Absolutely.
Don't just, there's only a few companies out there that have legitimate, qualified products that modulate the central nervous system. So if you want to know about them, I can share with you who they are, but I'm not going to get into the names of companies about that right here on the call. Okay.
Yeah, that would be really great.
Okay.
You talk a lot about using the subconscious brain to achieve these. How do you do that?
Well, you just know the system. Your subconscious brain is just an 800-pound gorilla. You just understand what it needs. Like I have a little puppy at home. I got to understand what it needs. And so you as an individual have to understand what your subconscious needs. You need to consciously understand it, because your conscious brain will go pick up a book.
Yeah.
So, your subconscious is just all your strength. It manages more than we can possibly manage with our conscious thought. So when it gets out of whack, it'll do stuff that causes irreparable damage to our life. It can do really bad stuff. And so the more you start to understand about it, the more you start using a system, the more you see the results, the more you use the system. So it sort of feeds on itself because it makes you feel better. Maybe you don't know why you feel better, but you do. But if you look back on it and you really study, if you're a crazy person like me, you don't have then you'll start to manage it and start to test it when you go out into the marketplace. So you test it at the store, you'll see how and what reaction you get, and they're not all great reactions. Sometimes we all say the wrong thing trying to get the right reaction.
Certainly true.
But it's great if I can go to the car and look at my system, and go, that's what caused the problem. Wonderful chatting with you guys, and I look forward to chatting more. Okay, yeah, that was great, Kelly. Great job.